listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the NFL Week 17 preview, Part 2 for Monday, December 23rd, 2019. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
All right, folks, we heard from the odds makers. Now let's get to the other side of the counter, breaking down the games with Bruce Marshall. I'm Brian Blessing. Week 17. A lot of gray areas, Bruce. A lot of games that do have motivation. We have some teams that have been out it for a long time that have remained motivated, and we got some that the bus is really warm. It's a weird week.
It is, and we'll see some of these numbers jump around during the week, too, when word comes of various guys sitting out. There's still lots of things to be determined, and it's funny. I mean, even games that you don't think have much bearing. I mean, Indianapolis, though it is out of the playoffs, it still could get involved as far as in tiebreakers and influencing other teams based upon its results. So very few of these games are meaningless. One other note, we saw from Cincinnati yesterday rallying in whirlwind fashion to force that overtime in Miami. The players on the field don't not try. I mean, the history is replete with instances of teams that tried in the final week and altered their draft position. Even at the top, I can remember Green Bay in '88 was lined up for the number one pick, and that would have meant Troy Aikman, and the Packers went out and beat the Cardinals in the last game, and that dropped them down. Let Dallas get above them to take Aikman. In '68, the Eagles and O.J. Simpson faded late, and that allowed the Bills to take O.J. I mean, and this goes on all the time. So the players will try. It's sometimes the coaches and the management will put a lineup out there that doesn't have as good a chance to win, but the players always give it their effort.
All right, sir, let's dive into our level best with Tennessee, a 6.5 point favorite at Houston. Total is 46. Houston getting ready for the Bills. I guarantee Will Fuller wouldn't play, and can't see any reason why Deshaun Watson should be out there running around. And we had one of the weirdest scenarios you just never see, and that's Tennessee resting their star player in Week 16 for the game in Week 17. And I thought Tennessee showed an awful lot against the Saints, although they came up short. And I would say this, man, if I'm Kansas City, and that the odds are it's going to be this way, if I'm Kansas City and I've got the choice of playing Tennessee or Pittsburgh, boy, am I a big-time Texans fan if I'm Kansas City. I think Tennessee's dangerous.
Yeah, I do too. And a little surprised, I guess, Houston, there's something to play for Houston here. Now, maybe there's word they're going to rest some guys this week. I don't know. But, I mean, they could move up to number 3. They'd need the Chargers to beat the Chiefs, which is unlikely. They're not impossible. So, I mean, there's a little motivation to win, although they've sewn up the South. Tennessee, now Henry did it was hamstring. They decided to hold him out last week. They would have held themselves if they beat the Saints, and they may have already been in here, but now they've got thanks to Pittsburgh losing, they have got a chance here. They're still 6-3 with Tannehill as a starter. They're still 8-1 over since Tannehill entered the lineup. I think they do win this game, 31-24. Tennessee. This team could still be a little bit of a thorn. These AFC wildcard teams are not all that bad if it's Tennessee and Buffalo. We know Buffalo is dangerous. I think Tennessee could be as well. And even if Houston tries this week, I think Tennessee gets them and reverses that close loss 2 weeks ago in Nashville.
Complete other side of the spectrum, Cleveland, Cincinnati. Cleveland 2.5, some threes on the road. Totals 45.5. Who the heck knows, Bruce? This Cleveland team, they're the, it's like Billy Martin's on the sidelines with them during the course of games. Cincinnati, to their credit, miracle comeback, 16 points in 35 seconds to get it to overtime, get the football a chance to win the game, Bruce. And they just spent the last half hour shredding the Dolphins through the air and then come out, run the ball a couple of times and have to punt. You tell me who's calling these plays, but this is a weird one.
Yeah, they outthought themselves. At least since he doesn't have to worry about a win now, spoiling a chance to draft Joe Burrow in April, which is what they're going to do. But don't be surprised if Andy Dalton outpitches Baker Mayfield here.
He's playing for a contract somewhere, don't you think?
He is. Absolutely. He's playing for a contract somewhere else next season, and there will be some suitors for him. He will have some offers, and he can end up starting at a few spots next year. So he's playing for a contract next year, so he's going to play. And they are still battling. I mean, that was ill-advised in the overtime, but I mean, that was quite a rally to come back yesterday. I don't know what you can – that's a bigger endorsement than I can give the dysfunctional Brownies. They've lost and failed to cover their last 5 on the road. And can Cleveland fans trust the owner, Jimmy Haslam, to remedy this ghastly mistake of promoting Freddie Kitchens to being head coach last January? I don't know. I mean, his track record is bad. Haslam's, I'm talking about hiring coaches. This thing's a mess. We predicted this early in the season that there were too many big personalities in that locker room for a guy like Kitchens to handle. They needed exactly the opposite of Kitchens. They needed a guy like Bruce Arians to come in and straighten that thing out. Instead, they went with a good old boy, and it's just a big party in Cleveland. I think they lose this game, 28-23 Bengals, and that would be a fitting climax to the season for the Browns.
Let me throw 3 at you just for giggles. Chicago, Indianapolis, and the Raiders. Where would Andy Dalton fit?
Indy. I'm not sure. Or Chicago, possibly. I think the Raiders are going to give Derek Carr another whirl next year. Matt Nagy might bring somebody in with Trubisky. I don't think they're quite ready to throw the towel in yet on him, but that's still looking the possibility. Those are 3 good options for them. We'll get to Indianapolis in a second, but Brissett's kind of playing to stave off any thoughts of replacing him in Indy for his final game this week against the Jags. We'll get to that one in a second. But I could see any of those as a landing spot, sure.
All right, let's go to an NFC North game with Minnesota hosting Chicago. The Bears' offense, I mean, completely inept against Kansas City. And Minnesota, who are they going to play? Kind of a mash unit specifically at the running back position.
Yeah, and here's the deal with Minnesota. Got the Green Bay game tonight. That still wouldn't get them first place in the North. They would need the Lions to beat the Packers. We'll get to that game in a second, plus win this game against the Bears. More realistic for Minnesota, if it can beat Green Bay, is a chance to jump up to 5 in the NFC, which could happen then if the Vikings win these last 2 and Seattle loses to the 49ers next Sunday night. Difference there is if you're the 5 seed in the NFC, you get a beatable NFC East champ in the wild card round, Philly or Dallas, as opposed to a tougher foe from one of the other divisions. So there would be something on the line here for Minnesota. So good chance they're not going to low key it. That's enough for us to buck the Bears, especially as Mitch Trubisky's brief renaissance a few weeks ago has fizzled. We talked about him a moment ago. Let's also note Chicago 2-9 versus the spread. Its last 11 this season. And throw this one into now after the Sunday night snoozer against the Chiefs. Trubisky and the Bears 17-5 to the under since midway last year. So a Vikings under recommendation looks in order here. 24-10 Minnesota will be our score forecast.
Indy's 3.5 at Jacksonville, totals 43. Indy's trying. Some guys on Jacksonville are, a lot aren't. I think there's a number could even go higher, and whoever shows up at Jacksonville could be more prone to boo these guys off the field. I trust Indy. I don't trust Jacksonville, but I don't know if I trust either team enough to bet it.
Yeah, that's a pretty good call on this one here. Jacksonville's owner, Shad Khan, he might have shown his cards last week when the mustache man noted he was planning to fire Tom Coughlin at the end of the season anyway, until the public airing of those many NFLPA grievances made it untenable to keep Coughlin for even one more day. And so now that the Jags are 1-6 straight up versus the spread since Halloween, is it really much of a stretch to assume that Doug Marrone and maybe the GM David Caldwell don't last past Black Monday either? Now, there's a report that Khan might be thinking about keeping these guys. I have a hard time buying that because his fan base would revolt, because I think Marrone's part of the problem too. At least we know Frank Reich will be back as Indy's head coach. Next year, the Colts reminded of their class edge versus another flailing foe. That would be Carolina, destroyed 38-6 yesterday. And we mentioned Brissett a second ago. He's got a little something to play for here because going forward with him as the guy, that's no sure thing. And his cause would certainly be helped by a better effort than he had, stat-wise at least, than Sunday against Carolina. He didn't put up great numbers, though his team played awfully well. With 24-15 here, we took Indy to win. We just don't want to mess with Jacksonville, whose offense, by the way, is stalled now with Gardner Minshew. Look at those first half numbers. Really bad for the Jags the past month.
Atlanta and Tampa Bay, I get it. It's a pick. I don't get the total, 49.5. Winston can go up and down the field. He makes incredibly egregious mistakes. Ryan just threw for 384 yards. I don't know. Track meet city to me.
Yeah, I mean, Christian Yelich, Mookie Betts, and Jameis Winston, all recent 30-30 men. If Jameis can fire 2 more interceptions this week, he's already got 31 touchdown passes. Boy, that was everything about Winston we saw in that game on Saturday versus the Texans. Yet Tampa Bay still had a chance to win. You can see something's a little different with this team, though, with the Arians. They believe they can win these games. He is short some of his top wideout targets, though, which could impact him a bit. I think Atlanta is going to win, and your over is a really good call here because we know Tampa Bay's trended that way, even though it didn't quite get there against the Texans. It should have. And Atlanta, like you mentioned, Ryan putting up big numbers. Julio Jones is really stepping it up at the end of the year. He's had 300 yards worth of receptions the last 2, and Ryan's over 4,000 yards passing again, very quietly with this late season surge, has put up some good numbers. And Atlanta, I think, is going to end up finishing every year. You see one of these teams that sneaks up down the stretch and starts winning. Atlanta's going to do that. They have played very well since their bye week, and they'll finish 7-9 with a win here. We think 38-27 Falcons. That's a Gold Sheet key release on Atlanta, and we can see your over being a very good option as well in this one.
Washington and Dallas, Bruce, they're rivals. Dallas 11-point favorites, totals 44.5. They've got motivation. They've got to watch the scoreboard. I'm telling you, bud, these two deserve each other. Jerry Jones, Daniel Snyder, Haskins gets nicked up in the game, comes out, wants to go back in, and the owner tells him not to go back in. It's incredible. So if he's saying that last week, then he's going to say, I don't want to expose this guy to injury. And I actually think, Keenum produces more points, to be honest with you. I mean, in terms of the flow of the game, not, that big picture, yeah, you want to work Haskins, but at the moment, I'll bet Dallas, my goodness, that offense was unbelievably bad.
Yeah, you're right on all that. Keenum actually might be a better option here for Washington for this one game.
Yep.
And he's fighting for a contract next year somewhere too. And, somebody will pick him up who needs a quarterback for a year. So there you go with he's kind of the Edwin Jackson of the NFL now. He just kind of shows up any year when they need a quarterback. But, these last 2 weeks have really encapsulated the whole Jason Garrett era in Dallas, Brian. Once more teasing at a breakthrough in a romp over the Rams, and then failing again to grasp the moment with it all on the line versus the Eagles on Sunday. This exasperating pattern still might have one more act, though. Cowboys' playoff hopes are remarkably not yet extinguished if the Giants can rise up versus the Eagles, so stay tuned. I think Dallas probably wins this thing, but maybe not by this number, which we're looking at double digits right now. The Redskins have not played badly the last month. I mean, they've been in every game, and Green Bay. They went to Green Bay and gave it a fight. They should beat Philadelphia. So I'd take the points. Keenum would not scare me. In fact, I'd rather have Keenum in there if I'm a Redskin backer. 27-23 Dallas. I do not think this will be easy for the Cowboys.
Yeah, and if I can see kind of an up-tempo kind of game here too. The Philly Giants game. Philly's 4.5 on the road. The total's 45. I give the Eagles full marks that they've survived just to get to the point where they beat the Cowboys, who I think completely spit the bit. But I don't think the Giants are going quietly into the night. So I think the Cowboys will be watching that scoreboard with interest here.
Daniel Jones, he doesn't get to face the Redskins here, but 5 touchdown passes last week suggests he can put a scare into the Eagles. Philly's mandate is simple. A win here guarantees the NFC East, but nothing is coming easy lately for the Birds, including that recent late rally and overtime escape versus the G-Men and Eli back at the Link 2 weeks ago on Monday night on December 9th. Now, every New York fan from Hoda to Al Roker is moaning that the G-Men can't even win correctly, with 2 straight wins likely costing a chance to draft Ohio State's Chase Young at the 2 spot next April. But those recent efforts, they're 4-1 versus the line in the last 5, suggest the Giants are indeed rallying for under fire Pat Shurmur here. And how about Saquon Barkley, almost 200 yards last week on Sunday against in the Giants game on Sunday that they won. So we're going to give the Giants a chance to keep this thing really, really close. 24-23, Philadelphia, right down to the wire again for the Eagles. It's been that way in almost all their games the last month, and this is what they need. It ain't going to be easy, though, and I think we're taking points.
Bruce, you got New Orleans laying 13.5, or 13, excuse me, against Carolina on the road. The total's 47.5. I think they cover the 13 with Teddy Bridgewater.
Yes, I think so. And boy, this Carolina is a mess. A wretched 7-game losing streak suggests the Panthers might be more in need of an exorcism than a rebuild. So maybe Max von Sydow will be a coaching candidate for 2020. So don't put that past this infuriated owner, David Tepper. Remember, von Sydow was the exorcist. So meanwhile, Will Greer's audition for the quarterback job went about as badly as everything else for the Panthers lately. 0 TDs and 3 picks against the Colts last week. Here's one other interesting note here. Unlike some recent final regular season weeks when Sean Payton has low-keyed it, including last year, the Saints are motivated for a win here to aid their first-round bye hopes. That it may be necessary for them to get a bye in the first round to win this game. They have also won and covered their last 6 away this season. And you talked about fans in Jacksonville. The only ones who show up might just be there to boo. Same applies here in Charlotte. I can't envision, first of all, many Panthers fans showing up, and the ones that do being very happy. 30-10 New Orleans, Carolina on the verge of a massive rebuild. If they're going to go with Greer again, they have very little chance to make this thing competitive.
Let's make some money tonight.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Pittsburgh's got a win, and bottom line is they had their opportunity last week, couldn't get it done. Now you're going against Baltimore, but who are the Ravens going to play? Nonetheless, bitter rivals, and if you got all these guys on the Ravens that have made the Pro Bowl, there's some quality players behind these guys. Pittsburgh's offense is such a question mark. Not for me. I don't know. What do you think?
Baltimore, I think, and Pittsburgh. For the days that Terry Hanratty or Mike Kruzek or Cliff Stout, when the Men of Steel could count on serviceable work from their backup quarterbacks if Terry Bradshaw went down. Now, despite Mike Tomlin's best efforts, the limitations of Duck Hodges and another setback for Mason Rudolph, it was his left shoulder against the Jets on Sunday, not to mention the latest injuries to James Conner and Marquise Pouncey, the top center, put Pittsburgh's playoff hopes on life support. The Ravens can rest some regulars with the top AFC seed sewn up. But even if Lamar Jackson sits, I think RG3 is a better option at quarterback than anything the Steelers have right now. One other note, John Harbaugh's teams rarely low-key it, as evidenced by Baltimore's startling preseason success in recent years. Even in preseason week 4, the Ravens always win, and he just doesn't tolerate a dull effort from his team, and I don't think that will change this week. And Pittsburgh's offense is too flaky right now to trust. 27-13, we took the Ravens. That's a Gold Sheet Key release on Sunday.
All right, Bruce. Jets at Buffalo, and we're seeing the Bills a 1-point favorite. Total on the game is 36.5, 37. Honestly, Bruce, I think this is a game, a meaningless game that I think there's value in betting, and that's the over. If the Bills sit Josh Allen, I would think you sit Devin Singletary, maybe a John Brown, but the Jets are playing hard, and Darnold's having some success. I think the Bills could rest a lot of the defense, but I'm telling you, I think, and if I were coaching the Bills, I'm telling you, they've got a guy on their roster, and I'm beside myself. They've had the ball twice against the Ravens at the end, and then again against the Patriots in the red zone with a chance. And the problem is they have Smurfs. They've got diminutive wide receivers. They need size in the red zone. They've got a guy on their roster in Duke Williams who should be playing. I mean, playing when it counts. I got a feeling he plays this week, and my best guess would be they bring TJ Yeldon, get the mothballs off the guy and bring him out to play a lot. I think, and Matt Barkley, if he's the quarterback, he put up 41 off the Jets last year coming off the street. I mean, it's a meaningless game. I like the over. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I could see that too. These are two old rivals from the AFL days. And it's interesting. They'll bookend this season with one another, and it makes for an intriguing what if had the Bills not rallied for that 17-16 win at MetLife on opening day. That sent both these teams hurtling in opposite directions, and that really opening weeks can mean something. I think it certainly did in this case. So you're right. The Bills are locked in here to the number 5 in the AFC. No reason to get too fancy. They don't lose much if Matt Barkley is in there for Allen, and you mentioned some of those other guys. Here's where I think the difference could be. Will the Bills' defense look the same if their lockdown cornerback Tre'Davious White sits out? I mean,
I wouldn't play him.
I wouldn't either, and he really shuts down half the field. So there's another case for the over. And plus, that scrappy win versus the Steelers last week suggested the J-men haven't quit yet on Adam Gase, as had been rumored lately by many in the big Apple media. So they're playing a little bit better here. We took the Jets 23-20. Bills just want to get out of here without getting anybody hurt. And I could see your over case for sure in this one.
You know what? I like the over, but the one thing, it is a thing. I think this is the last time the Bills will be playing in front of their fans. I mean, there's only one scenario, and that would be if Pittsburgh couldn't, but if Tennessee somehow ran the table and the Bills ran the table. But so basically, it's Buffalo's last home game. You got to take all this stuff into account. It's fun. I mean, you're trying to put a Rubik's Cube together in this week, man.
Yeah, just don't wear those all color rush, all red uniforms this week. That's all I ask.
No, treat them at home. Wear the blue ones. The blue ones are good looking. Miami, New England. New England is 16.5, 45.5. I don't, Bruce, Miami's playing hard. That's why it's way too high, isn't it?
I thought it might be. It depends here. New England, now back when Miami was really bad, the first couple of weeks, ran up a score on them down there. They have really battered the Dolphins up here in Foxborough. Now, down in Miami prior to this year, they had some trouble in this series, but I don't think that'll be the case here. But Miami might fight for a while. The deal with New England, here we go. I mean, the offense looked a little bit better against Buffalo. I mean, Brady had his best game in a long time. And they got Sony Michel and Rex Burkhead contributing, stepping up their games as normally is the case for Patriot weapons this time of the year. They also still probably need this one because if the Chiefs beat the Chargers,
right,
it's very likely.
No, they're playing for a bye. They're playing for a week off, and they'd be one win away again from going. I get the motivation aspect of it, but this offense does remain flawed.
Yeah,
and they did. They finally put some components to the offense together in a game that meant a lot to them last week. They deserve marks for that.
Yeah, this might be, the Patriots have been an under team. They barely squeezed over. That total dropped so much in the Buffalo game. But Miami's defense, though, is not too good. They're 30th ranked. They allowed Andy Dalton to throw for almost 400 and come back in that game last week. They allow over 30 per game. So it's a tough call, I think, to take Miami up here. We ended up leaning to New England, 35-16 or score forecast here. Not my favorite game of the week. They'll win, and it's just, what's the margin going to be? I don't think they'll allow this thing to get too close. We'll see.
All right, Green Bay's 9.5, 10 against Detroit, who seems to start well, Bruce, and just flounder as the game goes on. Total is 41.5.
Yeah, they just don't have enough offense here. They had a punt return touchdown against the Broncos yesterday to get them to that 10-0 lead, and then the offense did basically nothing after that. David Blau is trying at quarterback, but listen, he's a free agent out of Purdue. Wasn't even drafted this year. Here, the deal in Detroit is that Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, the GM, they got a stay of execution from the franchise matriarch Martha Ford, who has swung her axe indiscriminately in the past, but she has given these guys a mulligan one more year because of that's really Matthew Stafford's injury, I think, saved the job for both of these guys. So they'll get another chance next year, but they just don't have enough horses right now. Green Bay, there's a bunch of scenarios here for the Packers that suggest they should still be motivated. They're going to still play to win this game. Even if they lose to the Vikings on a Monday night, they could still win the NFC North if they win here. They are still going to be in the mix for a bye in the first round. They currently hold tiebreakers over the Saints. And then you've got the 49ers who would finish ahead of them, but they've got that game with Seattle. So Green Bay, if it keeps winning, is going to be a bye in the first round, and that is a powerful motivator for these teams, and we know it's important. So let's see. Devontae Adams also back in the fold for the Packers for a while now. He did miss that mid-October Monday night game. That was a 23-22. Packers defense playing much better lately, so we could see this thing maybe under as well. 27-13 Green Bay. I think they'll win and take care of the Lions and send Detroit into the offseason with another loss.
All right. The Chargers in Kansas City, 7.5. Chiefs are favored. The total on the game is 46.5. There's a bunch of soap opera stuff here. I would say, and we discussed it last week, you don't embarrass the guy in their last home game. But I can see a Tyrod Taylor sighting in this game. It would have been a disservice to Rivers last game at home. I think you can see Tyrod Taylor here. The other thing, Bruce, from an in-game wagering aspect here, if New England is stepping on Miami's neck, either a second-half wager on the Chargers or an in-game wager on the Chargers makes complete and utter sense. If Casey says, okay, so be it, Patriots are doing their business, they're taking everybody out in the second half. Everybody.
Yeah, I probably, although that's if they have the game in hand here, and they're going to be watching the Texans game too, because there is still a chance they could get leapfrogged by Houston and knocked down to fourth, and that puts a much more difficult wild card round matchup versus the dangerous Bills for the Chiefs, although they also did lose a game to the Titans if that's who they play. But I don't think they'd want to run into Buffalo if they have a chance. Nonetheless, they won't be in low-key mode at the start of the game. And
right.
And the Chargers, that you're right, I could see a Tyrod Taylor sighting in the second half. That might spur the Chargers a bit. It might not. I don't know. But the bottom line is now Rivers is not looking too much better. Longtime Chargers fans remember an end-of-the-line Johnny Unitas in 1973. People forget he played for the Chargers in 73, and you could tell it was done. It's done for Rivers. And
it gets sad. It gets sad at some point.
It does, and they have resisted even identifying a successor. They haven't even drafted a quarterback in years. They're either going to have to do that or they're going to have to go out in the market, and this market is not overflowing with answers. It's guys like Dalton and that who, maybe Bridgewater. They haven't drafted a quarterback. They're going to have to this year. We'll see. One other note, a totals alert here. Thanks to a notable improvement from Steve Spagnuolo's defense, the Chiefs are on a 5-0 under run right now. That is something to consider as well. We had it the Chiefs 27-10. I don't want the Chargers in any situation right now. They're a mess. Chiefs are going to at least be trying to win at the start. Their defense is playing great, and I think they win this thing going away. Gold Sheet Key release.
All right, Arizona and the Rams, 7.5 and 49. This game's below 7 if Murray's playing. Hundley looked okay, but that was a great effort by Arizona. Seattle clearly looking ahead to the game with San Francisco. This is a weird one. I don't know. It probably, Hundley or no Hundley, probably points because the Rams just feel compelled to throw it 50 times a game for no good reason.
Yeah, this is an odd one. Now, it's been a bad matchup for Arizona the last couple of years. And the only game they really looked lousy in the last 2 months was that game at the start of the month against the Rams in Glendale. They lost 34-7. Now, the Rams were mad coming off of that Baltimore debacle the Monday night before. But last year, they throttled Arizona, too. Different Arizona offense this year, I know, with what Kingsbury's done. It is hard to make a definitive pick, though, because there is a difference who's at quarterback. Murray came out with that hamstring pull late or in the second half of the Seattle game. Now, Hundley did lead a touchdown drive late, but this offense is not going to hum the same with Brett Hundley as it does with Murray. And if Murray's any bit not right, I hard to see Kingsbury putting him in there. But the Rams are, you're right, they are kind of flaky. I don't know what to expect here from them. This is their last game in the Coliseum, although these last game things have not worked too well. It didn't work for the Chargers and Carson last week. Didn't work for the Raiders in Oakland the week before. And for those of us who remember, the Rams had a last game in the Coliseum once before in 79 against the Saints, and they were on their way to Anaheim, and they had good luck and everything painted in the end zone.
My God, what are you playing, a Vince Ferragamo card on me?
They lost 29-13 to the Saints. So the thing is, these last games in these venues don't often mean all that much. But we still took the Rams here in this one, 31-17. So I could see it maybe going over as well.
All right, a monster Sunday night game. NFC West on the line. San Fran 3 minus a quarter. This game's going to 3.5 or 4, Bruce. The total in the game is 47 is the consensus. And Seattle is a mash unit.
That's right. It was an easy call for NBC to flex this NFC West showdown to the Sunday night spot. 49ers are in line for the top seed in the NFC with a win. They dropped to the 5 seed with the loss. Seattle, though, is at risk of dropping all the way to 6 in the NFC with a loss here. Now, it's true San Francisco's defensive numbers have tailed off in the second half of the season, partly due to injuries, partly due to a more difficult slate. But they are at least more healthy in the secondary now than they were earlier in the month. And healthy, that's not the case with the Seahawks. They're now taking more injuries now on offense, especially at running back. I mean, they are decimated right now with Carson and Procease getting hurt last week, maybe out. Rashad Penny is already out. They may have to go with the rookie from Miami, Travis Homer, is their number one option this week. I could see Pete Carroll scurrying around looking for a running back somewhere who's looking for work to come in this week. That's limited Russell Wilson's options. Wilson's numbers have tailed off the second half of the season. And the Niners are 6-1 on the road this season. Their only loss came in the last play at Baltimore, so they can take their act away and win, and they will here. 31-23, our score forecast for San Francisco. They avenged that Monday night loss, which they should have won against the Seahawks last month in Santa Clara, and that'll give them the top seed in the NFC, and I think Seattle is running on fumes now.
If Seattle were to win, San Francisco will be about an 8.5-point favorite at Philly. If the Eagles win, it's crazy.
Yes. And they'd be favored at Dallas too if that's the matchup. But we will see. Seattle, though. I mean, who would have thought? I mean, Seattle could end up at the 6th spot, Brian. So it's kind of it's been a tough. They just don't have enough bodies right now, and it's the last week of the regular season. I mean, you're kind of stuck with what you got. There's not a lot of options out there in the marketplace for you.
Bruce, one game left on the rotation, and that's the Raiders and Denver, and the Broncos are 3.5-point favorites. The total on the game is 41. And just when you're sitting there saying, hey, game doesn't mean anything, not so fast. Haley's Comet, Stranger Things, the Raiders need a 14 parlay. They need the Titans and Steelers to both lose. They need the Colts to beat the Jags. Maybe it's not that crazy. Tennessee facing a non-motivated Houston team might be the toughest of the lot, but there's a chance.
There is, and because of that, that's why you have seen a lot of these kickoff times. As often as the case, they want to get the games that impact one another kicking off at the same time. And you've got a lot of games that would figure usually as early kickoffs are now late kickoffs, including the Indy game. And it's funny, Indy is only involved in this because if it's involved in tiebreakers, it impacts other teams. Indy can't get it in, but that's a late kickoff, and Pittsburgh, Baltimore's a late kickoff to go at the same time as this one. I mean, they needed almost as unlikely a parlay this past weekend to still stay alive, and the Raiders got it. So they're halfway there. And this would be, it'd be like a 10-teamer for them. Everything would have to fall right, and they've got half of it down. Now but keep in mind, they were winless the last month before hooking the Chargers last week. And Derek Carr, though, did rise to the occasion, 26-30. And he's performed well in Denver before. Last year, he completed 29-32 in a game at Mile High that Denver won in the last play, but still he's played okay there. Uncle Vic, though, this Denver actually might get its haunches up here to play a game against a team that needs a win here. He's coaxed some good efforts out of the Broncos since October. They're 8-3 their last 11. They're also 3-1 with Drew Lock at quarterback. But can we trust Denver to lay points here against Oakland, which is going to come in here firing? Who knows? We took the Raiders 20-17. Let the dominoes fall where they may. Who knows? An 8-8 Oakland team could still get in the playoffs, which is really an indictment of the mid and lower levels of the AFC. Not an endorsement of the Raiders, but it is what it is.
The craziness of Week 17. It's the odds maker's worst nightmare. A lot of gray areas for the bettors, Bruce, but there are some spots where I think you can take a stand.
I think so, and it happens this way every year, and there's a lot of moving parts this week, and it's good fun, so we'll see what happens.
All right, my friend. Bruce Marshall, the legendary publication, The Gold Sheet. We've made it through the regular season. We're talking wild card weekend next, Bruce. That'll be fun.
Yep. Merry Christmas, Brian. Talk to you then.
And you too, Bruce. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. We'll be back talking playoffs next week with Bruce.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com. And reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and/or interpersonal relationships. At betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling, an approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.